So the vision for the Vintage Banquet started about 10 years ago, in actual fact, long before the Vintage Banquet came into being. We had a lot of homeless people who started coming into the church garden. At that point, we decided to open up the church doors and have a regular weekly meal together, which was called the Great Feast, based on a story that Jesus told, a parable about not inviting your best friends and all the upper crust people, but invite those people who are vulnerable, accept that they've got problems, issues, just make a place available. And so we started opening the doors. We started having shared refreshments at the beginning, and then we had a meal together. So that was a good learning experience about people who very often had time on their hands, have vulnerabilities, and it became a really great place with 60, 70 people turning up every week. But we reached a point where actually we're doing meals and we're dealing with issues for the homeless people really well. And so we decided to close down the Great Feast, and we thought, okay, what's the next step? And the next step was, if you up the grade, the Great Feast has become vintage, the good egg, sort of older, the Vintage Banquet for people who in their older latter years might be alone, might be vulnerable. Well, instead of the Great Feast, let's do the Vintage Banquet.
Well, we have a big banner out the front of the church. You may have seen it, you may have filmed it actually. So that's helped a lot. And I go to a lot of social events for the elderly around Kingston and the Norbiton area, handing out flyers and giving a little bit of a promo conversation with people. And then it's word of mouth.
Basically, I used to cook for homeless people in a church in Tooting. And I happened to be passing by here. I did some shopping in Asda, and that's where I met Clive. And I said, well, you catering, with a trolley full of things? He said, no, we got a Vintage Banquet next door in the church. So he said, come and have a look, So I came along and had a look, and I said, I used to cook for homeless people in Tooting, but I gave it up because I spend less time in Tooting now than I did. And he said, well, do you want to come and help here? And that's how it came about.
I heard about the Vintage Banquet from a different group I go to. Elaborating a little bit, my wife's got dementia, and it was one of the dementia groups suggested that I should take her out more to meet other people beside dementia sufferers. And somewhere along the line, the Vintage Banquet was mentioned, so I thought we'd give it a try, so down we come. That was about a year ago, I believe. Every day is busy. My wife goes to a Monday club where I take her at 10 o'clock and pick her up at 2 o'clock. We don't call it a day centre because she doesn't like the word day centre, because it's the Monday club. Tuesday, I'm lucky enough that her sister comes and picks her up and they go off shopping or do whatever they get up to. Wednesday is my favourite day, which is shopping, which is I take Mag, I call her Maggot, right? So I take Maggot, her cousin, and a friend across the road. So I'm only the taxi driver, we go shopping. Thursday we come here. Friday we go to the sing-along, which is another group for dementia people. And every second Saturday in the month we go to what they call the Saturday Club, which is for dementia people and their carers. So that's the week.
I actually come to church here on a Sunday. So I moved from Fulham to Kingston about 12 years ago. And so I was one of the first when this opened, about 4 years ago, I think. This is the 4th year. And I used to be a helper, but when I had my get hips done, and I haven't been quite very well for the last couple of years. So I'm now a guest. They won't let me help. Well, I help a little bit, but I had a major heart attack 2 years ago, two and a half years ago, and then unfortunately I've always suffered with my hips. So I'm now a bionic woman. I have a new heart and 2 new hips, but I'm still going.
Fellowship. There's tremendous fellowship, there's a lot of love, and it's just good. And I have great joy when I do a reflection. I have great joy because I have great joy in the Lord. And for me, that's very important. And passing that on, that love here to people is such amazing. It's such an amazing part of the Vintage Banquet.
It's not a matter of a favourite thing, it's the fact that we come here, we've always been made most welcome. When we first arrived, we were made most welcome. We get a nice lunch, silly jokes and quizzes and such like. I don't know whether, has Clive been mentioned? The coordinator. The coordinator organises silly quizzes and silly jokes and that type of thing, and bingo and games. That's what we get up to on a Thursday down at the Vintage Banquet.
When we're doing our silly games, when we're doing our quizzes and things, it keeps your brain alive, it keeps you bright, and makes you laugh. And we've got a new game now, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's an amazing game. It keeps you really, and it's good fun. Grab all the enjoyment you can while you're young. Do it while you're young, because one day you might not be able to do it.
Live. Don't be afraid to live. Don't be afraid.